Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. I am so incredibly excited to be your teacher today as we dive into the fascinating, invisible chemistry of acids and bases. We interact with these chemical solutions every single day, often without even realizing it's happening. But today, we're going to uncover exactly how they work, how we measure their strength, and why they matter so absolutely much to our daily lives. Okay, are you ready? Let's dive right in. I want you to think about this real-world question for a quick second. Why does a bee sting or a nasty brush with a stinging nettle hurt so unbelievably much, while rubbing a simple dock leaf on your skin can almost instantly soothe that burning pain? It kind of feels like magic, right? But it's definitely not magic. It is a brilliant example of invisible chemical warfare and neutralisation happening right in the palm of your hand. By the end of our lesson today, you'll know exactly the science behind this awesome natural phenomenon. So here is our roadmap for today's explainer. First up, measuring acid-base strength. Second, decoding the pH scale. Third, strong versus weak solutions. And fourth, pH in everyday life. All right, let's jump right into section 1, measuring acid-base strength. To figure out what kind of solution we're dealing with, we use visual indicators. Now, simple litmus paper is pretty straightforward. It's basically binary. It just turns red if a solution is an acid, and it turns blue if it's a base. It tells us what the solution is. But if we want to know exactly how strong it is, we need something a bit more advanced, like a universal indicator. This paper is actually impregnated with a whole mix of different indicators. So instead of just a basic red or blue, it gives us this magical full spectrum of colors showing all the different pH levels. It doesn't just say, hey, I'm an acid. It gives us a quick, instant measurement of the chemical's true strength. Now, what if an acid or a base is just way too strong? Well, we use a very common process called dilution. Dilution is literally just adding water to a concentrated solution. Think about it. When you add water, you are actively reducing the concentration of those H+ or OH- ions per unit of volume. You're spreading them out. By pushing that concentration down, you get a much weaker acid or base effect. It's a super fundamental way we control chemical strength in the lab and at home. Moving right along to section 2, decoding the pH scale. Okay, so what exactly is the pH scale? Think of it as a 0 to 14 logarithmic scale used for the precise quantitative measurement of hydrogen ion concentration. And because it's a logarithmic scale, a drop of just one single number actually means it's 10 times more acidic. So the absolutely crucial thing to remember here is this inverse relationship. A higher H+ ion concentration actually equals a lower pH value. I know, it sounds a little counterintuitive at first, but just remember, the more crowded the solution is with those acidic hydrogen ions, the closer that number drops all the way down towards 0. Now, smack in the middle of that 0 to 14 scale, we have the number 7. This is our neutral point. Picture pure water sitting at room temperature. At a pH of exactly 7, the H+ ions and the OH- ions are perfectly, flawlessly equal. Imagine them sitting on a seesaw, completely balanced. They cancel each other out entirely, creating a perfectly neutral solution. But what happens when we leave that neutral safe zone? Well, if the pH drops below 7, we enter the realm of acidic solutions, which means we have a higher H+ concentration. Think of lemon juice at a super tart pH of 2, or your morning cup of coffee sitting at a mild pH 5. On the flip side, if we go above 7, we get alkaline or basic solutions. This is where the OH- concentration really dominates. Everyday examples would be baking soda at pH 9 or normal bar of soap at pH 10. You literally interact with this entire spectrum every single day. Let's get into section 3, strong versus weak solutions. The secret here all comes down to an invisible microscopic mechanic called dissociation. Let's think about strong acids first, like hydrochloric acid, or HCl. When a strong acid hits water, it undergoes 100% ionization. It completely shatters apart into H+ and Cl- ions. It leaves absolutely nothing together, which drives the pH way down. But for weak acids, like acetic acid, you know that as vinegar, it only undergoes partial dissociation. It doesn't fully break apart, so it releases a limited number of ions, meaning it sits at a much higher, safer pH value. And you know what? That exact same logic applies perfectly to our bases too. A strong base, like sodium hydroxide, undergoes complete dissociation. It releases an absolute flood of OH- ions, pushing the pH to extreme highs, well above 12. On the other hand, a weak base, like ammonia, only undergoes partial dissociation. It produces fewer OH- ions, keeping the pH in a much more moderate, manageable range of 8 to 10. So, just remember, chemical strength isn't just about concentration, it's really about how completely the chemical breaks apart in water. Let's do a really quick recap of these core rules before we move on. Number 1, the pH scale measures H+ and OH- ion concentration to determine a solution's strength. Number 2, strong chemically means complete dissociation, producing an avalanche of ions and giving us those extreme pH values at the very edges of our scale. And number 3, we have an awesome arsenal of tools, from visual universal indicator paper to super precise digital pH meters, to measure all of this accurately. Finally, let's jump into section 4, pH in everyday life. Let's start with the most important thing, you. Your very survival depends on this exact chemistry. Human homeostasis actually requires your blood pH to be maintained within an incredibly narrow critical window of 7.35 to 7.45. If you step outside this tiny range, the enzymes that run your cellular functions just stop working. Your body uses these amazingly complex buffer systems to constantly monitor and maintain this delicate balance. So yeah, regulating your internal pH is quite literally a matter of life and death. It's also hard at work every time you eat. Your digestive system is basically a built-in chemical factory. First off, your stomach produces hydrochloric acid, creating a highly acidic environment with a pH of 1.5 to 2.0 just to break down proteins. Secondly, you have a thick mucus layer that protects your stomach walls so they don't accidentally digest themselves. Third, sometimes things are a little off and we produce excess acid, which gives us that awful burning pain of indigestion. And step 4, we use neutralisation to fix it. We take an antacid, like magnesium hydroxide, which is a mild base, and it reacts with the excess stomach acid, neutralizing it and bringing you relief. Now, let's talk about your teeth. Tooth decay is actually a step-by-step biological chain reaction completely driven by pH. Step 1, the bacteria in your mouth feed on leftover sugar from your food and produce acid. Step 2, this acid causes the overall pH in your mouth to drop. And here is the major danger zone. If that pH drops below 5.5, step 3 kicks in. Your tooth enamel, which is made of incredibly tough calcium phosphate compounds, actually begins to dissolve. And finally, step 4, cavities form. This is exactly why your toothpaste is basic. It neutralizes that acid and stops your body's toughest armor from literally melting away. Let's step outside our bodies for a second and head into the garden. Agriculture is entirely dependent on soil testing, simply because different plants demand completely different chemical environments. For example, if you want to grow nice, plump blueberries, you actually need highly acidic soil, somewhere between 4.5 and 5.5. Most of your standard vegetables, they prefer it neutral, right around 6.0 to 7.0. But if you want a field of beautiful lavender, you're going to need alkaline soil between 7.0 and 8.0. You really cannot optimize farming without mastering pH. But when we alter pH on a massive global scale, the results can be truly devastating. Because of pollution, sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide emissions mix with water in the atmosphere to form acid rain. Now, normal rain is already slightly acidic, but acid rain drops the pH below 5.6. And while that might sound like a tiny drop, it can completely devastate aquatic ecosystems, killing fish, destroying plant life, and stripping vital nutrients right out of the soil. Monitoring environmental pH is absolutely crucial for protecting our planet. Which actually brings us full circle to that question I asked at the very beginning of class. Nature has been using this chemistry long before we ever discovered it. When a stinging nettle or a bee attacks you, it literally injects formic acid into your skin, which causes that intense burning pain. But nature's remedy is usually growing right nearby. Traditional treatments like rubbing dock leaves or even just applying some baking soda from your kitchen cupboard provide basic alkaline properties. These bases react directly with the formic acid, chemically neutralizing the attack and stopping the pain in its tracks. So, to wrap all this up, mastering this invisible chemical balancing act is absolutely vital to our world. We use it to monitor our health, keeping our blood chemistry safe and our digestion comfortable. We use it to optimize agriculture, ensuring we can feed the world through careful soil testing. And we use it to protect the environment, monitoring acid rain to save vulnerable ecosystems. pH truly matters everywhere you look. So I want to leave you all with this final thought as we close out today's explainer. Knowing what you know now about this invisible chemical balancing act happening all around us, how are you going to look at your mildly acidic morning coffee or your acid-neutralizing toothpaste differently tomorrow?
Science isn't just trapped in a textbook or a lab. It is in every single sip you take and every breath you breathe. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I will see you in our next explainer.